Yeah. Please proceed, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Anne. Good morning, everyone. Very nice to see you back with the Performance Scrutiny Committee. We are using a strange format, and before we begin, I do have to read out a formal notice, so please bear with me. This Scrutiny Committee meeting is being conducted remotely in accordance with the coronavirus regulations and the remote meetings protocol agreed by the Council, which will operate alongside the Council's standing orders to ensure that we continue to take democratic decisions in an open and transparent manner. I would remind members that this meeting is being live streamed to the public. Can I request that you all switch off your cameras and mute your microphones when you're not speaking to ensure there's no unnecessary background noise, and to help with the audio and visual quality of the broadcast. The Council's standing orders and code of conduct will apply at all times during this virtual meeting in the same way as ordinary meetings, and members should conduct themselves accordingly. Can I also remind members to ensure that their chat function is switched on and to use that facility to indicate to me when they wish to speak on a particular item. Please do not speak until I invite you to do so. And remember your microphone and switch your camera. Remember to unmute your microphone and switch your camera on. For the benefit of everyone watching on the live stream, when I invite members to cast their votes on any particular item, they will do so electronically using the voting facility in the chat function. The votes will be automatically counted and are recorded on the system, but individual votes are not identified on the screen, and the chat room poll is not available on the live stream for public viewing. However, I will announce the number of votes cast for or against and any abstentions before I declare the result. As well as being broadcast live, a recorded version of this remote meeting will be uploaded onto the Council website for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting. Welsh translation of the proceedings can be provided upon request. The images and sound recording may be also used for training purposes within the Council. So I now declare this meeting open. Are there any apologies for absence?
No apologies have been given for today, Chair.
Thank you. And next, are there any declarations of interest? I take it there are no declarations of interest, so we will now move to the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held in January of this year. So we'll go through in the first instance, page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7.
Chair, can I query something on page 7?
You can indeed, Councillor. Go back to page 7, please, Neil.
The last paragraph, Chair, could somebody inform me whether the Fairness and Equalities Impact Assessment has now been published? That's right. The last paragraph on page 7.
I see that, Councillor, and yes, I think that is something that you're right to ask about. And can we make a note that Councillor Watkins would like an answer to his question, please?
Chair, just to answer that question, this relates back to the pre-budget consultation. All of the fairness and equality impact assessments would have been completed before the final budget went to full council for approval. So bearing in mind that these minutes go back to January, then all of those FEIs would have been completed before the budget was approved by council.
Chair, it says in the minutes that it was completed, but they weren't published. So just querying whether they now have been published.
Can you answer that, Gareth?
They would have been published with the budget proposals when they went finally to cabinet, then for council for sign off. They were available as background papers, so people would have been able to access them. I don't think they were published with the printed agendas, but there was a link within the documents, each of the business cases, that gave you a link to the fairness and equality impact assessments. So yes, they were available for the public to view.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Gareth.
You're happy with that, councillor? We'll move on with the minutes then. Page 8. Page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Page 12. And I think that's the final page on these rather substantial minutes. Are you all happy that I signed them as a true record of the meeting in January? Can you?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. In which case we will move on to the next item. Oh my goodness me, I'm so sorry. Could I please have a reminder as to what the next item is?
So it's in the chat box, Chair. This is the annual forward work programme. This is the discussion about your forward work programme for the next 12 months.
Thank you very much indeed. It isn't in my chat box, but I think I'd better just explain for the benefit of anyone publicly watching. There are some issues this morning with IT, certainly with me. So yes, we are required now to look at the the forward plan, work plan for us. And has everyone had the opportunity to look at the COVID-19 health emergency moving to recovery draft sheet where the strategic aims are shown? Can I ask, has everyone had opportunity to look at that?
I haven't, Joan.
Right, I understand they were sent out to all committee members.
Ah, right. I'll have to check then, Joan, after this meeting, because I'm not familiar with that.
Right.
I read it the email. The email came out about 4 o'clock yesterday, if it helps any colleagues.
Right. Okay, right.
I think it would have been helpful then, perhaps, if that had been sent out a little sooner, because we do need to look at that. There are 4 strategic aims as part of the draft recovery plan. And would anyone who has had opportunity to review this document, would anyone please like to kick off with issues that they would like to move to our work programme?
Chair, Councillor Watkins is queued up to speak. And can I remind everybody to keep the meeting chat clear, and if they would like to speak, could they click on the raise hand facility? Thank you. Over to you, Trevor Watkins. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Steve Marshall mentioned, we didn't get it till 4 o'clock late yesterday. I'm rather concerned that we're now discussing that at this meeting because of the shortness of that document coming out. I have read the bullet points, but only the bullet points, and I'd like to go into the detail of those later, after reading the details. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor, I think
Chair, before somebody else comes in, can I just explain the process that we're going through here? Those recovery aims have been agreed by Cabinet in terms of the higher level strategic recovery aims coming out of COVID. Now, what the suggestion is that rather than you actually review those aims now, that you look at it in the context of the service area plans, so that when you come to look at people's performance and service area plans now for the current year, that will help focus the debate and you can look at those recovery aims in terms of whether they're properly embedded in service area plans and whether the particular actions that are being taken in service areas actually support those objectives. So it was sent around really for background information. There was no intention that you'd actually debate these at any great length as strategic aims, because they're very high level strategic aims that Cabinet agreed back in June. They're really for background information to inform your work programme when you get into the detail of looking at service area plans. So that's the reason why it wasn't sent out earlier, and it was never intended that you'd go through each of these strategic aims now in any detail. But we're happy to have a discussion if that's what members want.
Can I please come in here, because when I saw that it had only gone out yesterday, and I do think it would be helpful for members to have had this information just to look at a few days earlier than yesterday. I hear what you're saying, Mr. Price, but I think, you know, members would have appreciated a little time to look at this document and to maybe make one or two notes. I myself was fortunate enough to pick up a hard copy, which I requested, and it was provided, and I have been able to go through it, and I have been able to make some notes, and I'm sure my colleagues on this committee would maybe have done similarly. So does anyone else want to make comment on this issue, please?
Councillor Stephen Marshall has raised his hand. Councillor Marshall, if you could put your camera on whilst you speak, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair. Chair, my question or query is, can we have some kind of context in relation to the COVID situation for things like social services, things like education? Because I'm aware not everything will be monitored in the same way, how the committee usually reviews like reports coming through the year. So just a bit of context about what the committee can expect moving forward would also be very helpful in order for us to understand what we're going to be able to review throughout the year as well.
Yes, I think you make a very good point, Councillor.
Do you want me to answer Councillor Marshall's question?
If you would please, Mr. Price, yes.
Right. Yeah, again, just to explain the process then, obviously at this time of year as a performance scrutiny, you would be looking at the outturn service plans for last year and shortly the 6-month review for the current year's performance for the place related services. Now, because time has moved on, I think you've all had hard copies of the performance reports for last year, most of which reflected the fact that in the last quarter, the COVID response sort of overtook other business as usual sort of service delivery objectives. So the view was that what you would do for this year is that when the first service plans come before you, either in October or November, the heads of service have been asked to update those service plans to look specifically at these recovery aims. And what they're going to do is take these high-level strategic aims that Cabinet have agreed and drill them down in terms of detailed objectives within each of the services. So particularly for social services and education, there will be actions that will come out of this list of strategic objectives that they will embed within the service plans. And that's what we're saying that the performance scrutiny will be asked to do in the next sort of few months and during the course of the year in terms of performance, is look at how that translates into objectives within each of the service areas, whether they're the right objectives, and how successful those outcomes have been. So that was the intended process. I think that today was just to kick that off. I think the detail will come next time when we've got the first 6-month service plans that have been updated to reflect these strategic aims.
And when, Mr. Price, can we expect to get those plans so that we can give them, you know, a really thorough going over?
Well, we're asking the performance team when they will be ready. Now, at the moment, it'll certainly be November at the latest. We're not sure if they'll be available yet for October, because there's a lot of updating required in terms of the objectives and measuring the outcomes for the first couple of quarters. So certainly November at the latest. We're hopeful that one or two might be available for October, but we'll have to keep that under review, and we'll discuss that with the chair before your next meeting.
Good, thank you. It's going to be very difficult then until we actually get those details and we can drill down into them ourselves. It has been very difficult throughout this pandemic with the emergency measures that have been in place to, you know, have information with regard to how services are being delivered. And as councillors, we're all, you know, very keen to ensure that services are being delivered.
Can I just say, in response to that, in terms of information, the cabinet agenda for September will be going out in the next sort of few days, and there will be a COVID report on that agenda that actually will look at what service areas have done in terms of the response to the COVID-19 emergency, and also in terms of recovery, what has happened in the first quarter of this year. So I think that will give scrutiny members some detail as a starting point to base their review and challenge of the service plans. So that's the cabinet agenda that's going out in the next sort of few days. If you look at the cabinet report, that will give you some detail, some flesh on the bones, as it were, in terms of what this translates into in terms of service area actions.
It might be helpful for members to know when that cabinet meeting takes place, some advance notice, please, because members might like to go and sit in on that meeting to hear a little more as to what is being presented. Yes, we will get the subsequent paperwork from that meeting, but I think sometimes it's very helpful. So I am suggesting that perhaps members might be able to attend that meeting and learn a little more if possible. Thank you.
I think the meeting is a week Wednesday. And it's a live broadcast again, so members, if they click on the link on the council website, they can view proceedings live. So Anne will confirm that, but I think it's a week Wednesday is the cabinet meeting.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Gareth. Chair, also Councillor Routley would like to speak next.
Please go ahead, Councillor Routley.
Can Councillor put the camera on, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the forward work programme, I would like to see how the Bridgeview Centre regards to the placement of children who who cannot attend mainstream schools have fared during the pandemic situation, because we haven't had a chance to scrutinise anything there during the last 5 months. And so in the work programme going forward, would it be possible to get an update as to how they fared during the pandemic, please?
Thank you, Councillor Routley. I am sure that information can be brought forward. I think we all share your very appropriate interest in how those looked after children placed out of area have fared throughout this pandemic. So thank you. Does anyone else have their hand up with questions, please? Or
yes, Chair, Councillor Trevor Watkins.
Councillor Watkins, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I've noticed on this document, the moving to recovery draft, the what's on there? The strategic aims 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's no dates on when they aim to be completed. Do we know anything like that, or is it just a document which has come up what they hope to achieve?
Chair, if I could answer that, these are high-level strategic aims. They're linked into the corporate plan and the well-being objectives. So against these particular objectives, there is no target date. But as you drill down into service plans, so that within each of these strategic aims, there will be actions and objectives for each of the service areas. Now, within those service plans, they will put a target date and a deadline for completion of those actions. So all of the detail will appear in the service area service plans and performance plans for this year.
Thank you. Understand, Gareth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Price. Does anyone else have their hand raised, please?
No further hands raised, Councillor.
Right, thank you very much. I have made some notes as far as I'm able. I share your point with regard to, you know, timings on these strategic aims, but I also hear what Mr. Price is telling us. One of the things that has been raised with, well, two things have been constantly raised with myself through the pandemic, and what I would like, particularly now, for us to be able to drill down into is access by residents for help and information, given that the information station has been closed and still is. The reception desk at the Civic Centre is closed, and my own personal experience of trying to get a bit of information via the contact number 656656, I was faced with a 28-minute wait. So there are substantial concerns as to how residents in Newport are able to gain access to help and information, and what plans are in place to reopen these channels whereby information and support can be obtained. So, Mr. Price, do you have any input you might put in, give us into that?
Again, I think the detail will be apparent when other service areas report back on how this translates into what action they're delivering. That's an issue, I think, for customer services. Yes. In terms of reopening public buildings, and again, there will be a paper that feeds into the strategic aims that will go to cabinet about the new normal and new ways of working. So eventually, as part of these strategic recovery aims, there will be a detailed report in terms of what customer services intends doing with the reopening of the information station and with the reopening of public buildings, acknowledging that things can never go back completely to the way that they were. So there will be a report coming forward on that, and there will be an opportunity for scrutiny to have input and to challenge the basis of that proposal.
Can I ask members if anyone please has any comments to make on this issue?
Chair, Councillor Marshall has something to say. Thank you.
Councillor Marshall, feel free, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is about how we move forward. So over the next couple of months, are we going to be splitting the strategic aims up into like one meeting we do number one, another meeting number two, or are we going to be looking and scrutinising all the strategic areas within one meeting and seeing how they develop through? Thank you.
What I'm suggesting, Chair, is that you will do as you've normally done, which is you will get the service area reports for the people-based services. And what you will then challenge and scrutinise them on is how that relates to these strategic aims and whether you think they've got the correct objectives in to deliver these broad strategic aims. So we're not going to go through each of the strategic aims. What we'll take are the various objectives that sit below them, how they relate to your group of services that relate to people's services, and then pick them up through the service plans. And then you have an opportunity to raise questions of heads of service and cabinet members about the impact on their particular services and what they propose doing in the recovery stage. Now, if something comes out of those questions in terms of wanting more detailed reports on specific issues, whether it's schools or adult social services or anything else, then we can put those in the work programme as and when. But I think the starting point is to have the first round of service plans for this year and for you to start looking at those in detail.
I think Councillor Marshall, though, raises a very good point. I don't know what colleagues think, but we maybe have to look at them in, you know, I think we will have to look at them in some detail if we are to challenge or support, whichever is appropriate. And there are a number of service areas that come within the remit of this committee. So we may have to look at the strategic aims in terms of services we may not be able to fit them all in on one meeting. This is what I think I'm trying to say here. What do colleagues feel?
There are no further questions, Chair.
No one has their hand up?
No.
So I think I'm right, Anne, that in the past anyway, we have split the performance reviews over 2 meetings. So you would have
Yes.
one meeting, say, for education services and another for social services. So yeah, we can do that certainly if that's what committee would prefer. We can have 2 meetings, one to look at, say, the social care element of it, and one to look at schools and education.
Can I just say, I think that would be the most appropriate format, giving us the opportunity to look more in depth at all these issues: adult social care, education. These are all big areas of service delivery, and we need to ensure that that delivery is effective. So I think, yes, my suggestion would be, let us do that over 2 meetings, because I think we would do a far more effective job of reviewing and making comment and suggestion.
Chair, Councillor Routley would like to say a few words. Can I also remind everybody to keep the meeting chat box clear? Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Councillor Routley.
It's okay, it's all been said. Can I concur with yourself and Mr. Price? I think that is the correct way to go about the business before this scrutiny panel.
Thank you, Councillor Routley. I would hope everyone else will be in agreement. It will be in agreement with the fact that we will review these issues over 2 meetings, because that will give us a more in-depth approach. Now, anyone got any further comments in respect of this suggestion? No? Can I well, be a little naughty, really? I did make notes. One of the things that I am concerned with is to know what plans are going to be put in place for dealing with homelessness in the long term. I am aware that in the short term, accommodation has been provided in the main for the majority of people who find themselves homeless. But I'm very, very keen to know what will be in place to support people out of homelessness, but whilst they're still in that very tragic situation, what going forward will be done to support them? So I think that's an area for me which I would want to have answers.
Just on that point, I mean, the slight difficulty with that one is, of course, housing services and homelessness comes under performance scrutiny committee for place and corporate, because housing services comes under regeneration, investment and housing, so it probably doesn't come within the remit of this particular people services committee. I mean, you can certainly ask in terms of any sort of social adult care issues that arise out of housing concerns, but actually the homelessness response will be picked up by the RIH service plan, and that will be reported to the other performance scrutiny committee.
Well, thank you for that clarification, Mr. Price. It's very welcome. But yes, in my view, there is a requirement for accommodation, but there's also a requirement for other services to support someone moving into accommodation. And some of that will, I believe, come under the remit of this committee.
Yeah, I agree that in terms of support for people in the accommodation, that is within the remit of this committee, absolutely.
Thank you very much. And please, everybody, if you have got issues, concerns, or whatever you would want to raise on these, issues going forward, I have been fortunate enough to access the strategic aims sheet in advance of this meeting, so I've been able to look at things that I thought were of interest and importance to this committee. I was wondering, I know that there have been grants to support startup business, so I think we should have a little more information as to what that has fully entailed, and also what support has been available and is available to support unemployed people gain access and opportunities to training. I just wonder how that has been delivered and how it is being delivered. That would, I think, be something of interest. But whether that in fact is part of the remit of this committee, I would need that confirmed.
Chair, you have a couple of questions queued up. Sorry to interrupt, Gareth.
No, sorry, I was just going to answer that question. Unfortunately, again, in terms of startup grants and assistance for businesses, that comes within the remit of regeneration, and that's for the other performance scrutiny committee.
That's fine.
Like you said, if any issues arose out of that impacted on people's health and social care and other things, then you could pick it up as part of the remit of this committee. But the particular strategic objectives in terms of economic recovery is dealt with by the other performance scrutiny committee.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Bright. I'm coming at it from the, I suppose, humanitarian point of view, because I am aware that, you lose your job, you're out of employment, it is going to impact on your health and well-being. Now, please, who's next with that? I can't see who has their hand up, unfortunately. So please, will you bring forward the councillor who put their hand up first, Anne?
Yes, Chair. The first one to speak is Councillor Janet Cleverly. Thank you.
Please go ahead, Councillor Cleverly.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Few things I need to mention. As you know, all through lockdown, I've been working with the food bank and the homeless, providing items for them. But also this week, one of my residents wanted to, he's self-serving and he haven't got a computer, and I had to go on my computer and log on for him to sign up for home options. Is it completely new system for me, as I've no idea of using it before, because in the past when I've worked with young people, I've taken them to the information station to sign on for accommodation, but as you know, that's closed. And if you ring up 656, you cannot get no contact with them whatsoever. So I still don't know if what I've signed on with him, if it's the right procedure or whatever. I have no idea whatsoever. So it's just trial and error at the moment. And our library is still closed. Only the Central Library and Ringland is open. We really need our library open in Bettis, as our estate is so big, is amazing, So I was just wondering how long that will be before it opens. That's all.
Oh, Councillor Cleverly, you do well to raise those issues, because it all goes back to, supporting what I was saying about people not being able to get the help and information, because the channels that are allegedly available to us just aren't working. No information centre where people can go and have, you can do that, in my view, socially distanced, and staff can have PPE to keep them safe. But it's very much my view that it would be so much easier for the information station and the reception desk at the Civic Centre were open for people to go and get information. You're quite right about the 656 number. I cannot say, and I'm sure colleagues are in the same position, how many people have complained to me about their inability to get help and advice via that telephone line. The wait times are horrendous. So we've got a situation where people are not able to access, and you've given us a perfect example, Councillor Cleverly. Somebody
Chair?
else has their hand up?
Yes, Councillor Stephen Marshall, Chair.
Go ahead, Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. So just reading through the strategic aims and about what our committee does, and I fully appreciate that we'll be reviewing and evaluating the reports as they come in. My main concern is the committee able to receive kind of an immediate update on the readiness of digital inclusion with schools for those that might not have access to Wi-Fi or internet or computer facilities. My main concern on the basis if a school or a class had to go into lockdown, how ready are we enabling our children and young people to make sure that they have full access to that type of computer, etc., and equipment?
Thank you very much, Councillor Marshall. Again, that's an extremely pertinent question. And can I refer it to yourself, Mr. Price? Because I think, yes, we should have that information available to us as soon as possible.
I assume that information had been provided already. I mean, in terms of when the schools went into lockdown initially, following the lockdown in March, education ordered a large number of devices that could be made available for families who didn't have access to their own laptops and tablets. So I think that was already in place during the 4 months when the schools were closed. But Sarah Morgan, the Chief Education Officer, can provide more information on that, and she can provide far more detail when she presents her service plan to Scrutiny. But I am aware from meetings with the corporate management team and COVID Gold that large numbers of devices were ordered to help digitally excluded families during this period.
Mr. Price, you're giving us a good answer, but Councillor Marshall makes a very good point. There's two things here as I see it. Were those pieces of IT equipment sufficient to cover every child across the city? And are measures in place to ensure that that is the case, just in case there should be, a sudden spike in the COVID virus, which might mean one or more schools having to be closed temporarily?
I agree. Very valid questions, and the Chief Education Officer will need to answer those when she comes before Scrutiny.
Well, I suppose
at the moment I can't answer that for her because I'm not being scrutinised here. I'm just looking at your forward work programme. But in terms of process, that's an extremely valid question. It picks up on the recovery aims and the response to the initial lockdown. So that's a question I'm afraid you'll have to wait and raise with the Chief Education Officer when you review the education service plan.
But that won't be for another month, will it?
It's not, but if you just want information, you can submit a question to the Chief Education Officer now asking for that information and confirmation. I'm sure the answer is yes, but I don't want to give you that answer. I think you want far more detail from the Chief Education Officer.
Councillor Marshall, as you raised the question, and yes, certainly a very valid question, would you like to pose that question to Sarah Morgan, and perhaps you'd be kind enough to ask her to share her response with all the members of this committee so that we're all very clear as to the status quo in respect of this issue? Councillor Marshall?
Yes, Chair, I'm just making a note of that to do now as on my to-do list. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. That's excellent. Does anyone else have their hand raised, please?
Yes, Chair. Finally, I think that Councillor Routley would like to say a couple of words.
Please go ahead, Councillor Routley.
My question, and indeed the answer, has now been provided by Stephen Marshall, and the answer has been given by Gareth Price, and I'm satisfied with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Just for clarification, if I may, looking in respect of these strategic aims, the issue of air quality, which affects us all, is noted. I think what would be good to come to committee, because it does affect the health and well-being of every single person living in this area, would be what exactly are the issues, are the measures to be put in place to support improvement in air quality. We have, as I'm sure you're all aware, a particular problem with air quality here in Caerleon, but we're not the only area, I understand that, and I think we should have some information as to what measures are being put in place to make improvements on this issue.
Sorry, Chair, again, I seem to be interjecting and telling you it's not within the remit of this committee. Air quality will be picked up as part of our service plan, and that goes to performance committee for corporate and place. That said, I mean, other members, as Councillor Marshall has just alluded to, other members are entitled to information. So if you just want information about how that translates into actions, you're more than welcome to ask for that, and you'll be provided with the information. But in terms of this particular scrutiny committee's remit, obviously the work is divided according to council service areas. I mean, anything really could have an impact on people's health and well-being, and it affects people. At the end of the day, services relates to people. But unfortunately, in terms of the scrutiny performance committees, they're split up in terms of service areas. So all of the things that you're raising are within the service plans and the service areas that report to the other scrutiny committee. Yes. Your scrutiny committee ostensibly is concerned with the likes of education and social care.
It is indeed, but it's also about health and well-being across the piece, and that's why I was asking the question. But we certainly, I think, all are aware as members that we can put questions to cabinet members on a question at any time basis, and hopefully we do all do that.
Can I also say on the sustainability and air quality issue, there is another report that's going to cabinet a week Wednesday on sustainable travel. And that will be an update in terms of the measures that have been put in place to improve sustainable travel, which will have an impact on air quality. So again, that might be of interest to scrutiny members who might want to read that report, and also maybe dial in for the live broadcast to listen to the debate on that.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much, Mr. Price. That's very helpful indeed.
Chair, Councillor Marshall would also like to ask a question.
Please go ahead, Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. My next question is, again, for information. Where would the committee be able to go to receive information on mental health services, especially during these lockdown situations, and be able to confirm what the situation has been and will be in the recovery stages, please?
Again, a very good question. Mr. Price, can you help with this, please?
Again, the same answer. When you receive the adult social care service plan, Chris Humphreys and the cabinet member will be available to answer those questions. If it can't wait until the meeting, then Councillor Marshall is again entitled to raise a written question, and he will be provided with the information, and that will be published.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Marshall? What it means is you can put a question in at any time, as I'm sure you are aware. But yes, I think also that is an issue that we will need to look into when we have the Senior Officer for Adult Social Care and the Cabinet member present at our next committee meeting.
Thank you, Chair. I just found it a bit more prudent because of the urgency in my eyes of the situation. So I'll put in a question alongside the same guidelines as my previous one, and I'll ask for a response to the rest of the committee, Chair.
Councillor Marshall, that's very helpful. Thank you very much indeed. That will be good. Now, does anybody else have an issue or raise their hands for any questions?
Yes, Chair, Councillor Cleverly.
Go ahead, Councillor Cleverly. Are you muted, Councillor Cleverly?
Sorry. Hopefully that's better.
We're on a learning curve here, aren't we?
Information for Councillor Marshall, that CAMS have been working all the way through lockdown, and perhaps he needs to get in touch with them on an email probably. Okay.
Councillor Marshall, did you hear what Councillor Cleverly just said?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll also send an email to Chris Humphreys, as Mr. Price also noted. So hopefully we can just clarify the whole situation for both young people as well as adults in our community. Thank you.
Excellent.
Yes, excellent. Does anyone else have a hand raised with a question or a comment?
No further questions, Chair.
Right, thank you very much. So please remind me, if you will, what is next on the agenda?
There are no further items, Chair.
There are no further items, my goodness. So, well, what do I say? You know, we're all working to the best of our ability in terms of this new virtual technology. I'm sorry for any glitches that occurred initially, particularly with myself and technology. However, I thank everyone for their attendance today. I think we have a great deal of work to do in the coming months. We are responsible for holding the authority to account. We are responsible for being that critical friend, for supporting as appropriate, for challenging as appropriate. And I think you'll all agree that we are and have been and we still are in somewhat challenging times. So I really look forward to us all working together to do what's called a proper job. So thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance today. And I look forward to meeting with you all again in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan.
So,
Chair, do we have a date for the next meeting, please?
I was just going to ask that. You beat me to it, Councillor Watkins. Do we have the date for Anne for our next meeting?
Neil will provide the date now. Just one moment.
Thank you very much. Whilst we're waiting for that date, can I just say to colleagues, if any of you felt you'd like to just, you know, meet together socially distanced in the members' room to have a look at this strategic aims document in advance of our next meeting, just to have an informal discussion, I would be delighted to meet with any of you who you feel that might be useful.
Excellent idea, Joan, and I would be up for that.
Yes, I would too, Joan. I don't like these meetings on screen. I don't know, they're just dissociating, aren't they? They're just weird. I'd rather meet in person.
Well, it would be an informal meeting.
Yeah.
I think it would be probably very helpful to all of us as individuals to just sit down together, socially distanced, cup of coffee perhaps.
This is a question to Gareth. Would we have to do a special?
Right. You've got to do, yeah, sorry, I was just going to interject then on a cautionary note about those proposals. There are guidelines coming out in terms of the use of this building and risk assessments. Can you please wait until we've issued that before you arrange any meetings? Because at the moment, I know we're coming into recovery and we're looking at a phased return to this building, but we are still being cautious in terms of numbers of people in this building. And there are pinch points and there are concerns about whether we can socially distance in parts of these buildings. It works at the moment. I'm in the office at the moment, but there are so few people in, then it's not an issue. If we had larger numbers in the building, then we've got to look at the proper risk assessment and how we can ensure people are safe and socially distancing. So before you arrange to have even an informal meeting in the members' room, can you wait for that guidance to come out in terms of the management of this building, and then we can review whether that's practical or not?
We can by all means, but we would hope to have that information as to whether the building will be reopened. We need that information ASAP, please. But anyone who feels that they, would benefit by a meeting together, I take my friendship group to a place in Killeen, which is ideal, outdoors, covered, socially spaced stables. There are other possibilities. I just wonder if it would help us to have an informal chat together. And I can see that a couple of colleagues agree with me. Do we have the date for the next meeting?
Yes, Chair. The date is the 17th of November. And if you would like to officially close the meeting, then we shall stop the live recording. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will close the meeting now, and thank you everyone for your attendance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jo.